I'm really excited to support Greenlight Guru's following to talk about several critical topics and key considerations around how we strategically think about what's important, relevant to commercial launch and the synergies with talent management strategies. As we invest this time together, I'd like to attempt to share potential insights on how you consider the design of the commercial launch strategy, ensuring that you have the right talent currently responsible for the launch, or hire the right talent to create the greatest ROI, which leads to the greatest efficiency and market penetration for sustainable growth, and processes that lead to high retention of your top talent. So with that in mind, I believe that the right people in the right seat on the bus that additionally fit your culture are every company's number one asset. If you agree with that perspective, then not only is your strategy critical, but your ability to attract talent, have a process that is efficient, and your ability to retain that talent are critical subsets. So why wouldn't it make sense to make them a part of your quality management system and measure outcomes so you can create real best practices? The cost of a mishire is huge, particularly in the area of opportunity cost, onboarding, and wasted training. When you consider commercial roles and commercial launch strategies, the premise for talent management should resonate, and the damage relevant to mishires is even more impactful. Recently, at the Medical Device and Manufacturing Conference in Anaheim, Alpi Patel of Nelson Labs did a presentation on design V&V, and that every 5 years, a company should reevaluate their predicate device. Most companies that get warning letters or have issues in this area, it's because instead of their design history file being a living document, they look at it as something that you do once and then you put it to the side. That's a mistake that can cost a company significantly. Similarly, how you design your commercial launch strategy and your hiring practices are equally critical. So as we get started here, I'd like you to take a look at these paintings and see which ones that you appreciate or maybe don't appreciate. So Seventh Plague of Egypt, Romantic style, the Impression Sunrise is Impressionism by Monet, and then you have the number 5 Pollock, which is Abstract Impressionism. So all of these are considered masterpieces. I personally really love one I can take or leave, and the third, well, I really don't care for it much at all. So when it comes to talent management and commercial launch strategy, I'm not here to tell you which strategy or combination of strategies to pick for your company. My hope is that this presentation will help you think more proactively about the strategies available to you, that you pick an appropriate strategy for your company and available resources, emphasize your why and mission statement, make your TA and commercial launch strategies a part of your quality management system, and create the best processes to attract talent, optimize efficiency, and create an environment and culture that leads to high retention as well as optimal market penetration. But not picking a strategy is a strategy, just like failing to plan is planning to fail. Alignment within your organization will be a key topic today, and it starts with the company mission and your talent's why. Our SSI mission statement is to help candidates with relevant career advancement opportunities while helping to build companies that bring positive products to patient populations, and then supporting the charities that we care about. So our mission statement is on every stakeholder's desk. It's the mission statement that I started the company with in my home office back in 2015, and it's a part of our interview process and really who we are. In Hire for Attitude, Mark Murphy talks about a company in an offsite meeting. The CEO offered $1,000 to any one of the 100 managers who could share the company's mission statement. Not one could. Your why can't be lip service if you want to hire people that fit your culture. How do you expect your people to execute and meet expectations if they don't understand why they are doing it? While this is critical in every functional area of the organization, the ramifications during commercial activities can be amplified. I believe leadership is top-down. Extreme ownership is on our SSI preferred reading list. It's really our playbook for leadership and accountability to create efficiency and a culture that focuses on the attributes we want, bringing solutions to our partners, and problem solving versus finger pointing. When it comes to commercial leadership, it's vital to have professionals that model servant leadership and can lead from the front. They understand targeting across the portfolio of solutions, proper funnel management, and can optimally combine in personal activities with digital tools and technology to access decision makers while understanding how their product differentiates from the competition. This is our EVP, employee value proposition. I'd consider having a similar thought or statement for each commercial launch for everyone involved directly or indirectly in that launch's success. I have a curiosity and a keen interest in other people with a passion for helping bring positive products to patient populations. So that ties into our mission statement. While I want to be successful, I'm more interested in being a part of a unique team and bringing value to others. So that's the first half of our EVP. Our mission statement, vision statement, and EVP are visible throughout our office. Every single person we interview, after we learn what is important to them, the first thing they find out about us is the type of person and traits that are important to the SSI culture. The book Hire for Attitude by Leadership IQ's Mark Murphy, I think it's a great guide for hiring practices. It really resonated with me. When you look at Leadership IQ's data, it showed that of the top 5 reasons for bad hires or failed hires, only 11% were for technical aptitude. The others were not coachable, poor temperament, and don't play nicely in the sandbox, low emotional intelligence, and poor motivation. I mean, wow. How important is it to create an interview process that identifies candidates that match your culture, have the right attitude, and can grow with the company while eliminating those that don't? Forget about execution. How successful will your company be in the preparation of commercial launch strategies if your responsible talent doesn't understand the mission, doesn't fit the culture, and then has challenges with their temperament or their motivation? The key characteristics we're looking for, they're going to make sense, but there are a couple in particular I'll highlight. Integrity, resiliency, and ability to handle change well. We've had so much change here in the last 2 years. Team players that look out for others and think about how to partner with clients, candidates, and their peers, and then coachability and a desire to grow. So I'm not going to offer any of you $1,000 if you can share your mission statement with me, so don't bother emailing. But maybe Greenlight might give you maybe half off your quality management system cost if you can prove that someone has stated this to you. So who watching has had an impressive talent or leader, someone you would identify as a top talent and that you respect, say to you, hey, I'm really looking for a bad culture, maybe someplace that I can't learn much, I won't grow, and heck, they can even pay me less than what the market is. I've never heard that. The closest I've ever come to it would be my mother, 77 years old. She keeps asking me to hire her for $60,000 a year. She wants to work 10 to 2 while answering the phone, and then an hour and a half for lunch. So shockingly, my mom is still retired. From my experience, as you go up the ladder of success, the first statement that I typically hear is, what's the culture like? The mission of the leadership? What's the complexity of the product and the value it's going to bring to patients? Is it in a growth area? And look, I know I'm going to work hard, but am I going to enjoy the people that I'm working with in the trenches? As I started to take my talent management strategies presentation and go through the process to customize it for today, I was really amazed at the parallels for key considerations, and I certainly hope it resonates for you. I want to consider how, first, you look at talent and talent evaluation relevant to emerging markets. Secondly, considering cultural characteristics first, followed by the minimal technical skills or the candidate's relevant commercial launch outcomes experience, and then the specificity of their overall experience that you're going to require. Third, this is typically strategies for autonomy. And while that's still important, potentially less relevant for commercial launch talent. Instead, let's consider how you evaluate success outcomes and capture them to compare and contrast talent. Fourth, how you manage your growth and share that vision. And then lastly, that you tie in your process for TA and commercial launch into the overall company QMS. Then you have to understand the market, do the proper investigation, or consult or partner with somebody that does know the market. A quick example here on talent in emerging markets. We have a new medtech startup company that we're partnering with. I think they have an incredible product and value prop. I was really excited to partner with them and successfully help them bring a senior leader into a critical area at the beginning of this year. So during that interview process, there were a few people that didn't really interview the candidates very well. They didn't try to attract them. And for the person that joined the company, they actually challenged the candidate about if they utilized their skills for activities directly relevant to their type of technology previously, which was interesting because the product had received breakthrough technology status within the last 2 years. So after the final interviews and debrief, the candidate's position was, what are you talking about? None of you have done this type of work before joining this company. We're all essentially crossover talent to this opportunity. And certainly the VP and hiring manager agreed. Should companies be more open to the right talent, the right ability and crossover skills with high motivation and a why that resonates with the mission? In the world of the metaverse, with how easy it is to find people, hiring commercial talent relevant to access or the size of their Rolodex might be short-sighted, particularly if they have the wrong attitude, don't fit the culture, and even if they interview well, they're not very likable. In leadership, for example, do you want people that can give directions but can't block and tackle? How well do they understand funnel management principles, market access? What are their success examples and how have you validated them? All these questions are relevant and matter, but they don't if they aren't a good fit for your culture. In commercial roles and launch, it's even more imperative due to the opportunity cost relevant to lost market share and revenue. As we consider emerging market niches and technology, our first benchmark is cell and gene therapy. This is an area that is set to explode in the next few years. Over 1,200 clinical trials currently, and half are in stage 2. By 2025, there'll be 10 to 2 new CNGT products that enter the market annually. 16 of the top 20 biopharma manufacturers have invested in this area since 2020, and BDO did a survey showing that 57% of life sciences companies plan to invest in cell therapies and 47% in gene therapies. Along with this staggering amount of investment in this area, Evaluate Pharma shared that conventional drug sales will grow at a CAGR of 6% and biologics, excluding cell and gene therapy, at 5% between now and 2026. Cell and gene therapy, in comparison, it's expected to grow over $45 billion during that period, a significantly higher CAGR of 63%. Now, what does this mean relevant to talent? RAQA, R&D, manufacturing, leadership, and commercial talent will all be significant challenges. Commercial launch talent will be a particularly interesting problem, as specific to the products, it doesn't really exist right now. A large percentage of that future talent will be crossover talent. When you think about emerging markets, any relevant talent is directly proportional to the size of the market. The talent war talks about strategies and identifying the minimal technical aptitude for any position, and then the minimum specificity of experience as well. After a candidate meets that threshold, focus on hiring for attitude, cultural fit, and their ability to grow. There are many critical considerations that directly impact the ability to have a successful commercial launch, and when to move into action is certainly one of them. In Cutting Through, Bernie uses 2 different quotes on gathering information and taking action. Colin Powell advocated a 40-70 rule. If you have less than 40% of the needed information in critical situations, don't act. But if you wait until after you have 70%, it's probably too late. Jeff Bezos said in business that 70% or higher was the target mark, but if you got over 90%, it was probably too late or slow. So I personally use the 70% target in my business to move to action. One of the listening to, a CEO talked about his first startup adventure where they wasted a lot of time and investment. They were too slow to market, ended up entering the market in the 8th position. The company ultimately failed, and he felt that was a major factor. I believe this principle applies in the same fashion to the talent process relevant to opportunity cost. As leaders, we need to get information from reliable sources and make decisions in a timely manner. It's another reason why tying TA into your quality management system and measuring outcomes is vital, and that's no different with commercial considerations. The Alexander Group helps companies with digital strategies, and I thought had a great article on this topic recently called Digital Revenue Organization, a Post-Pandemic Perspective. Data and technology advancements continue to fundamentally change how marketing, sales, and service organizations operate. Their recent research shared some interesting insights, including defining digital means innovative customer experiences enabled by data and technology. Secondly, there are typically 4 stages of maturity to scale as a digital organization. Third, leaders face common inhibitors in adoption, not surprising. Cross-functional teams need to collaborate on programs to bring the digital vision to life for the company. So to the first point on defining the word digital, interestingly, the survey found that organizations had a hard time defining what they do in this area. So think mission statement here. The census was defining digital innovation as how a business uses data and technology to create innovative, disruptive customer experiences that leads to competitive advantages. Key critical areas were listed as leadership first, then culture, then talent, technology, operations, and lastly, customer experience. I believe that order has a potential flaw. Leadership is certainly critical. However, the customer's perspective and needs should be at a minimum second, in my mind anyway. Let's consider why the industry is investing here. On the side of healthcare providers, it's changed their communication needs, preferences, and their expectations for how they interact with medtech companies and salespeople. On the side of medtech companies, it's increased awareness of the optimality of digital marketing efforts across three areas. First, penetrating their target market, engaging their customer base, the HCPs, secondly, and then third, increasing the return on their marketing investment. As consumers continue to become savvier and get more involved in their healthcare, the market's been shifting from servicing the patient to more opportunities for the patient to manage their personal health more effectively and with a better experience. Diabetes is a great example here. And the pandemic was a hyper catalyst to that effect. Social listening, email, social media campaigns, SEO and SEM, and digital channels, along with more mobile medical applications, are being highlighted. Hybrid product launches are the new norm after the pandemic. Along with in-person strategies, they include digital channels, social media campaigns, and online conferences. Those that execute on the most efficient blend of on-site activity and digital channels could certainly have the upper hand. In considering value prop positioning and funnel principles, let's first talk about funnel management. Mark Sellers made a significant impact on me over 20 years ago relevant to funnel management best practices and how important it is for the executive team in making key decisions. Too many companies have funnels for sales revenue and growth based on their sales activities versus the customer buying activities. That activity could be good, but what matters is how you track activities based on how the customer evaluates the process and makes decisions so that you know accurately when the company can expect ROI and revenue. To compete in the current market, it's no longer enough for a company to deliver a good or even a great product. Instead, they have to successfully position themselves as purveyors of an entire portfolio of solutions. Digital analytics are indispensable in identifying opportunities where customers are primed for the introduction of additional product solutions. Now, these solutions can best be positioned as complements to existing purchases that add value to the customer's business while also enabling them to better serve patients. In considering sales empowerment and account management, medtech companies whose target market and customer base include more sophisticated or institutional players are starting to rely on machine learning to provide salespeople and account managers with the data to effectively segment, prioritize, and care for each account. By integrating digital marketing with other marketing and sales channels, higher degrees of coordination and more consistent messaging are achieved to prime potential buyers for purchase. By taking an omni-channel approach informed by analytics, medtech companies can ensure they're engaging their target market and customer base online and in person at the right time and in the right fashion. As we prepared for today, we did research with over 170 medtech commercial leaders. I've also had additional conversations with multiple industry thought leaders on the commercial side of the business as well. The common denominator has been that the strategy options post-pandemic are very different. During a recent conversation with John LaHaye, a consultant currently with 30 years of commercial expertise, he shared a perspective of something that I actually recently discussed with Karen Posey, who coaches CEOs: understanding your customers. John did a project for a client showing that based on an evaluation of their top customers, the executive team's perspective of who they were targeting and then who they were actually targeting was completely inaccurate. Additionally, it doesn't matter how many channels that a company uses. It's how they customize the message consistently to their target audience based on what's important to them. John's perspective was that you don't want to mention scenarios or product categories that don't resonate with the customer. The focus should be finding commonalities and avoiding major differentiation in product segments. In recruiting, I call this getting out of the white noise. Before picking multiple channels, first understand your budget and the ROI that you're looking for. John and I discussed how he was amazed at how many companies don't differentiate between account management and sales into new customers, as the messaging and the approach should be different. What is the key message you want to share? How many channels will you use? Increase share in an existing customer or a new customer? What relationships could become partnerships? Carrie Dunbar, who leads corporate accounts at Innovus, was recently on our podcast and shared some great insights and key points on how they have turned relationships into key partnerships to help them grow. Karen Posey's had an impressive corporate career, including being the CEO at a medtech startup, and she consults with CEOs on strategy and opportunities to create sustainable, predictable growth, or SPG. When it comes to SPG, Karen's experience has been that the three biggest misses of executives and their teams don't have an actionable 3-year strategic plan and a 1-year operational plan. Secondly, they don't leverage customer insight at the decision maker level. Think funnel management here. Only 23% of the people from a Gallup survey reported yes, and then 30% sometimes. And then third, their financials or budgets were not linked to either one of those first two plans. If a company isn't leveraging customer insights, then that is going to lead to a tactical plan with marginal growth. Karen and I discussed a recent McKinsey survey that stated a CEO is responsible for 45% of strategy and the rest of the leadership team for the remaining 55%. Along the lines of extreme ownership, Karen believes the leadership team is the linchpin to avoid the silent killer of strategy misalignment, which dilutes change and causes employees to be less engaged. Interestingly, 68% of companies with low organizational alignment, so strategy, culture, and talent, reported very poor levels of employee engagement. Before we get started, we get into the larger commercial survey data that SSI gathered. Let's look at our second benchmark on emerging technologies. According to Rock Health, after the over $8 billion that was invested in 2019, in 2021, $29.1 billion was invested in digital health startups. In 2022, it dropped to 15.3, but the expectations are that this year will be similar to last. Now, that's a drop from 2021, but that is a substantial uptick from previous investment. Wearable technologies are growing at a CAGR of 28%, predicted to grow from $17 billion in 2021 to well over $100 billion by 2028. So it's interesting from a commercial talent perspective, because in my experience in corporate America, and even with this business, is if you do not fit a certain clinical area, product category, et cetera, you're not even in the conversation. If the consideration is hiring talent based solely on the perception of relationship access, you might be prematurely eliminating talent that fits your culture and can be successful with the opportunity to grow with the company. I'd consider having a person with the right minimal skills, the right attitude for growth, and that fits your culture. Now, if you can get both, outstanding. But having potential access or previous product-specific experience without cultural fit could certainly backfire. All right, we're going to get into our survey results here. So out of these following categories, the prioritization of investment when planning commercial launch. 48% of commercial leaders listed market strategy as their main investment. Interestingly, 18% for digital optimization, 16% in investing in recruiting talent, either internal or external, and then training and development of their professionals. So in order to understand the importance of this question, let's take a look at the percentages for those bottom three. What this means is that these commercial executives will invest in market research, but appear to completely discount investment in digital optimization and those responsible for bringing on their talent, not to mention training and development. You can understand the market exceptionally, but how relevant is that if you don't properly reach your potential customers or have the right people to do it? The second aspect of our survey I would share is that, and make two main observations. So 88% stated digital optimization as important or very important, while interestingly, again, only 18% listed it as the second most important to invest in. Is it possible older perspectives or behaviors are clouding newer realizations? In my experience corporately and in talent management, there have been many examples of missing out on top talent due to preconceived notions. Professionals that had successful careers by any measure, who had never had experience previously. A few examples: moving from clinical background to sales, business development, or marketing. Quality to regulatory affairs, which I've helped a few people do, but typically regulatory affairs leaders are not generally open to it. Moving from multi-product sales to capital equipment sales, which has longer sales cycles and sometimes real-time clinical trials for validation. R&D engineering to product management marketing, and then entering new clinical sales categories like wound care, distribution, where pricing is highly competitive. All right, think about this slide and how open you are to talent. Crossover skills, the person's ready for the next step in their career, open to strategies for autonomy, or are you simply going to overpay? Or is your leadership and value prop so amazing that you think top talent's going to cross the street, get at the back of the line for the same or less pay to join your team? Personally, my corporate career and entrepreneurial career are examples of someone who had never done any of the current or previous 5 roles until I was afforded the opportunity. In that regard, would it be worth considering that 45% of the commercial leaders surveyed might have missed an opportunity to hire someone with the right crossover skills and motivation that could add to the culture and help grow with the company? I suggest being open to the idea of talent after they meet the minimal technical, clinical, commercial, or whatever specific skill that you're evaluating and the specificity of that experience. Then hire for attitude, cultural fit, and their ability to grow. Looking at the interview structure for process and questions, it's vitally important to customize your process to not ask leading questions and to create an environment that identifies talent that fits your culture while eliminating those that don't. On the technical or relevant skill that you're looking for, make sure you have a specific process on how you evaluate those skills. This is different than the rest of the interview process and your cultural questions. You don't want their prior successes determined by gut feelings, a popularity contest, or because the interviewer got distracted or the company simply doesn't have the right process for evaluation. My recommendation for commercial roles is always have them do a presentation. Then make sure you're having the interviewer compile the information on whatever sales and marketing outcomes you want to evaluate so you can properly compare and contrast candidates in that area. Utilization of a balanced approach that includes relevant market penetration outcomes, references, creating interview questions that don't lead while identifying cultural fit, and a presentation could be an optimal hiring strategy for commercial roles. As we consider managing growth, particularly for startups and companies in growth stages, this is really important, as candidates want to understand this as clearly as possible, relevant to their risk tolerance. Consider having a strategy and prepared information that you want to make available publicly or after a signed NDA. Candidates always ask us, and we tell them that they need to understand the leadership's perspective and strategy on growth as well as hiring. Is there a well thought out plan? Jeff Brown, amazing professional, will be sharing great insights on this topic, which he calls advanced career ladders, on an upcoming SSI Executive Conversations podcast. For commercial roles and commissions versus bonus versus spiffs, along with base and benefits, make sure you have a clear picture of the compensation opportunity, including if there are caps on payout if they blow it out of the park. Top talent will want to understand this as clearly as possible. As I share this quality management system slide, the question I'm going to ask you that I believe is vitally important. If your QMS and it's designed for the products you manufacture or the services you produced matched your QMS for your talent processes, would that be a good thing or a bad thing? Unfortunately, from what I've experienced in the past 8 years, generally it would not be a good thing. As we consider the design of your commercial launch, it makes sense to consider the process of design and continual evaluation of each launch in a similar fashion to measuring outcomes and create best practices to improve future commercial launches. As you think back to the survey and ranking of investment in T&D, how well are companies learning from previous launches to benefit them for future launches? Mark Barron is a MedTech corporate board member with over 10 years of CCO experience. He shared insight on considering design quality relevant to intellectual property and trademarks and the tremendous value that it can bring. The value of intangible assets on the balance sheet is driven by IP and trademarks. So Mark shared a great example from his time at TIDI, where they made protective eyewear and their IP for a core product had expired. They did a contextual inquiry to assess all their customer needs for this product category. Their findings helped them to understand that eyewear was underutilized based on where it was available, location-wise within a facility. This helped the team develop a disposable dispenser box and generate clinical evidence to support the need for disposable eyewear. Those two elements drove a strategic revenue increase from $3 million to over $20 million in just 3 years for a newly developed and IP-protected product. Focus on your client patient population and their needs and perspective first. That's voice of the customer. Follow that up with your culture and putting in a leadership team that creates responsibilities focused on bringing great value to your customer, voice of the employee. And then lastly, follow that up by voice of the stakeholder. If you get the first two right, I believe that the last one will follow. Bernie shares that the number one indicator of company culture is that your employee would recommend your company first, and secondly, that your clients would. So after considering Bernie's point there, let's reconsider Karen Posey's direction on misalignment and how that impacts client engagement. That Gallup poll shared that 78% of employees felt their leadership didn't give a clear direction for the organization. Now look, what are the chances those employees would recommend the company if they aren't clear on its mission, its purpose, or its direction? Let's consider key signs of misalignment in a company. Karen's research showed that signs included the employees cannot consistently say what the organization does, what they do better than other organizations, and didn't clearly understand the value prop. High employee turnover, for sure, teams having trouble executing, and employees not being clear on the company's top priorities, or as Bernie calls the vital few. Okay, let's talk about commercial launch strategy. And just like developing, talent management strategy, and just like developing a commercial launch strategy, there's several ones to consider. Whether you start with your warm market or personal relationships first to find talent, followed by an internal TA or HR leader to create hiring processes, and try not to pay an external recruitment firm, that's one option. But key consideration I'll throw out at you there. The recruitment industry is a $180 billion industry and it's growing. So I'd respectfully propose understanding that fact proactively versus reactively. Start with a retained partner to identify your leadership and then move to a combination of priority partner or exclusive contingent partner with an internal system for the warmer market, building on that system so as you grow, you pay less in recruitment fees externally. Do everything yourself to a certain level of growth. Then take a vendor approach with multiple firms at the lowest contingent fees, all working against one another and your internal team to try and attract the same talent pool. We don't have time. I don't want Greenlight to yank me from the stage, but we don't have time to go over all those strategies and potential considerations. But the main thing I would share is to consider having two processes, one for the warm market and active candidates, and then a different, possibly more efficient for passive candidates, whether you're attracting them through internal processes or an external relationship if you want to get top talent. Relevant to attraction, the key item I'm going to share with you, if you make it transactional, you'll get transactional results, which applies to understanding and attracting clients during commercial launch as well. On this next slide, everyone's going to be familiar with these categories, and they certainly make sense. What I would highlight, why mission statement must be tied into your interview process. Secondly, they need to understand who they will become by joining your company and what's in it for them. You can't just interview candidates if you want top talent. 3, make sure you understand what you want them to do and how that will change over the next 6 to 24 months. This is critical and will directly impact retention. For commercial position opportunities, I think it's even more important on how it is thought out and variable comp is communicated. Also think with the end in mind. I wouldn't recommend hiring sales reps first and then managers second. 4th, AI and digital optimization are huge topics as the metaverse grows. What technologies are you utilizing to protect and enhance your value proposition as a part of your interview process? Think digital channels here. 5, the first interview, it's an important initial interaction. And if you start with HR, they don't have to be an SME for that position. But they do have to know what the responsibilities would be, how the company's position in the industry compared to the competition, the mission statement, and what's exciting. Lastly, it's a numbers game. You have to understand that, and every time you get up to bat, it matters, including the candidate's perspective on whether it's a positive or a negative experience. It literally is a numbers game. Think about this from a commercial standpoint. Your TAM, your SAM, and then your serviceable, obtainable market that you're looking for. The difficulty of a position you're trying to fill will directly impact the numbers first. Clinical, RA, design quality, product management or digital marketing experience. Secondly, the location, the level of competency that you're going to require, strategies for autonomy, etc. You simply need to have an understanding of how many candidates your internal team or your external partner are going to have to go through to get an accepted offer. I bet you might see some similarities here relevant to funnel management and targeting for commercial launch. Part of attraction is not only how you initially reach out, how quickly you respond to a direct application or a submission from an external source. It's how you share the opportunity, the mission. Why would they want to come to your company? So it's a cultural fit for both sides. There's a similar parallel when companies consider your product or service. And I find that with hiring for commercial roles, the interview process can tend to be more transactional and less efficient with too many interviews because of the structure. Efficiency of process, it has so many aspects to it. It really might be the most challenging aspect of the hiring process. How quickly do you respond with feedback after a submission or even an interview? No response at all because you're not interested. My respectful but serious question: how would you feel about your company's process and how quickly you get feedback if you were interviewing in that process? Would you feel respected? After thinking about that answer, determine the max time you would want to wait to get feedback, and I would suggest starting there. HR departments are extremely busy and in some cases overwhelmed. Whether you use an internal process or external partner, you must make sure that the people understand how to reach out to talent appropriately. They know the mission and the company value prop relevant to the industry, and they can tell the story to attract the talent. To the talent experience, the experience can be like dial-up versus high-speed internet access. So if you do it internally, you've got to make sure the people in those positions have not only the right skill, but the right bandwidth. I've seen so many examples of good HR people that are in a position that maybe they don't have the right skill for, and many scenarios where the internal people are inundated with too many roles. So they don't have the bandwidth, and that can be a dangerous combination. Whether it's hiring processes, efficiency of resources for commercial launches, or identifying the most effective combination of in-person versus which virtual or digital strategies to choose, identifying your vital few is critical. The amount of examples I regularly hear about companies that had someone they really liked but didn't get an accepted offer, or were going to offer, but it was too late, it's extensive. Be proactive in your process. Make sure that you have whatever checkoffs done before you move to final interviews so you can get offers out as quickly as possible. Every day you go past the final interview or the verbal offer without a written offer, your chances of getting across the finish line go down exponentially. From a commercial sense, think good, better, best. If you can't determine that efficiently, then how can you expect to attract top talent? Last year, we worked on a position for a new client in an emerging market that was a critical role. Brought 3 candidates, they liked them all, interviewed them, and one they loved. Now, quick timeline here. For our client, reached out to the candidate, attracted them, submitted them on day 3. Then it took until day 16 for them to get their first interview. 19 days later till the next interaction, and they brought them on site. In comparison, in the middle of that process, a competitor, smaller competitor in the same area, got involved, called the candidate, scheduled an interview right away. The interview went really well, and the internal recruiter, because they got it after a 30-minute screen, said, hey, I want to fast track this and move this forward as quickly as possible. Don't laugh at me, but we're serious about this position, and I think you could be a great fit. So after that first interview on Friday, which only took 2 days to set up, they went on site the next Monday, had a great interview. From that point, it took 5-6 days to put together an offer. Not ideal, but still light years ahead of my client. By the time that client got the person on site, which went really well, the candidate was impressed, it took another week to get feedback. They wanted to make an offer, but unfortunately, it was too late for that. And by the way, I actually just spoke to this candidate recently, in the last few weeks. After 6 months, they've done such a great job at that company, they just got promoted. Changing careers is one of the top stressors in a person's life. It becomes very emotional for a lot of people. And do you think this candidate felt valued by my client, or that the position was important to them compared to the competitor? Retention of top talent, it's so important because of how hard it is to get the right talent that is a cultural fit. And then the cost of replacement is significant. Very similar to execution on commercial launches, relevant to wasted resources and the opportunity cost if you miss out on gaining market share. Attraction and understanding what you need someone to do in the position and how that can change will directly impact retention. We have a client, we've helped over 20 people join, really nice culture and good people. 2 years ago, we helped fill a challenging technical role with about 30% travel required. The candidate was really excited. 6 months after the start date, the candidate resigned, and the client was frustrated. After talking to the candidate, the reason why they left was that what they bought was not what they were sold. Now, from a commercial standpoint, how important is it to create solutions that benefit them and make them not only excited with the outcome, but that they would also lead them to recommend you? Back to that candidate, about 4 months in, he was told that he would now have to be on call every other weekend, which was new, never discussed previously. After reviewing the travel schedule, he'd been traveling double, 60% of the time, and now had to be on call for a salary position. That was really a deal breaker. Okay, let's quickly look at why talent leaves companies. Historically, the hiring manager is always number one. I'm sure you've heard the saying that people don't leave companies, they leave managers. Second and third, a company that cares about quality and creating a quality culture, they're huge. Most people in our industry are here because they care about patients and making a difference. At LSI's Emerging MedTech Conference, for example, many of the innovators were there because they have a loved one that dealt with a clinical issue, or they may have dealt with them themselves. When you think about the top reasons people leave, it is important to hire the best leadership and focus on your quality management system. Making sure that your products bring incredible value to patients and your team cares about the mission and the value prop are equally as important. Not understanding this can hurt the company in multiple ways. Okay, key takeaway, from today. Number one, give your target audience first consideration in determining what omni-channel strategy to use for commercial launch for the highest ROI. For talent management, consider all your options, but you must pick a strategy. Secondly, make your mission statement, vision statement, and why a part of your interview process, as well as your commercial launch strategy. You must live it. Third, determine your minimal technical skill and experience required. After that, hire for attitude, cultural fit, and ability to grow. Fourth, focus on customer insights first. New account or increased client market share second. Determine your in-person versus virtual and digital channel strategy. Then put together your overall commercial launch strategy with a focus on alignment driven by your key leaders and stakeholders. Fifth, tie your talent management process to your QMS, track outcomes, and utilize analytics to create best practices so you can create an exceptional candidate experience. Take the same consideration, evaluation of commercial launch strategies so you can learn and improve with each consecutive launch and create the best customer buying and clinical outcomes experience. As we reach the end, I always mess up disclaimers kind of on purpose, but just so you know, I don't get any royalties for any of these books that are sold or when they get a speak. So feel free to give me a plug to them if you'd like. Podcast. 3 of the people that have been mentioned during this presentation have already been guests on the SSI Executive Conversations podcast, and several more will be releasing in the future. You can access these wherever you listen to podcasts by searching SSI Executive Conversations. I hope this presentation brought you some value, and please reach out if we can help you define your strategy to bring the right talent that is a cultural fit, help you create processes and share technology that attract the right talent while protecting your value prop, or help you set up best practices for your interview processes.